Time now for the Sunday Roundtable here on OTR. We're joined this morning by Democratic political analyst Marianne Marsh and Republican political analyst Virginia Buckingham. Okay, guys, right off the top, you just heard Rachel Rollins unequivocally say no, she's not going to run for mayor. So what's your immediate reaction? Marianne, let me start with you.
That was a no.
That was a no.
That was not a no. No, that was no, not right now. I'm really interested in what I'm doing. I'm fighting crime, all that. No, that's not a no. And I think it has less to do with Marty Walsh and more to do with the political environment where a lot of people are challenging incumbents or thinking about it. So she bought herself some time, but that was not a no.
Ginny, what do you think?
I heard no. I mean, I have ears. I heard no.
Right.
And I think it's smart. I mean, she just got elected and she is really turning over milk bottles and changing the system in Boston and Suffolk County. She has a lot of work to do, so stay focused.
So let's look at the national picture. We finally know that Kamala Harris is Joe Biden's VP pick. So where does this leave Elizabeth Warren, our senator? Is she likely to stay put, or if offered something in the Biden cabinet, what would entice her to actually leave the Senate? Let's start with you, Ginny.
Well, what a concept. Stay in the Senate and work for the people that elected you. You've been pretty distracted for a while now, so I'd say stay in the Senate. Hey, maybe Biden will put her in the Treasury Department and we'll see our economy go even further down the tubes with her policies. That could happen too.
Marianne, what do you think the chances of that happening?
If the Republicans lose the Senate, Ginny, and the Democrats win, then I can see Elizabeth Warren becoming a committee chair. And she would be a formidable adversary to the Trump administration, whether it stays or leaves, because she will hold them accountable for all the crimes they've committed in the last 4 years. So whether it would be banking, finance, commerce, health, education, and labor, any of those committees would be a huge platform for her, and she would hold them accountable. I could see that happening.
But if they lost the Senate, Marianne, do you think that might entice her to go to work for Biden if he's offers her something?
It would have to be a great post, right? So maybe Treasury, maybe. I don't know. But I think there's something about Elizabeth Warren. She's her own person. And I think if she stayed in the Senate as a committee chair, if the Democrats win, which I think we have a great shot at doing if it's a fair election, whole nother ballgame here, she would hold Trump accountable like nobody else.
And Ginny, by not picking Warren, how will it affect Biden and voters?
I mean, I think many voters had a sigh of relief because I think she would have moved the ticket far to the left, would have hurt his chances. And now he's presenting an exciting yet moderate voice as an opponent to Trump, which is their best shot.
Marianne, what's your read?
I think, look, Democrats are united in defeating Trump, period, full stop. All the Warren supporters are with Biden-Harris. Every Democrat is with Biden-Harris. There may be a handful of progressives, but it's not because he didn't pick Warren. It has nothing to do with it. So Democrats are really united going into this general election.
Ed Markey and Joe Kennedy, they offered their strongest attacks against each other this week. But what do they leave on the table? Their final debate here at WCVB is just 2 days away. What does each of them still have to do to win in 2 weeks? Marianne, as we've said before, and you've said it before, you're at a firm where one of your colleagues is working for Kennedy, but you are not.
Yeah, and for the people in the back, I got a bunch of colleagues who are also with Markey, including the founder of the firm, and they, like everybody else, gets to hear what I'm going to say right now. So I think when you look at the last debate, the question going into this next last debate here at WCVB is the contrast that was drawn between Kennedy and Markey. And Kennedy used his advocacy for the DJ Henry family against Markey, where he went out and worked and tried to help them and continues to do it. All Markey could do was point to 2 letters that he put his name on. So Joe Kennedy's making the point that there's more to being in the Senate than just signing paper, whether it's letters or legislation. So the question is, can Joe Kennedy make that contrast stick to Markey and stick with voters going into the home stretch? Because that could be the difference in this race. And I tweeted it's at the heart of this race during the debate the other night.
Ginny, what do you still need to hear?
So I think I still need to hear why Joe Kennedy thinks Ed Markey should be fired. I don't think he's ever made that case effectively, and that is the case that needs to be made. Remarkably, Ed Markey has made himself the outsider in this race, and Kennedy's the establishment. There's no more establishment name than the Kennedy name in Massachusetts. So I want to hear why fire Ed Markey. I haven't heard it yet.
I'm just curious, guys. If voting has already begun, so people have already cast their ballots. There is a debate on Tuesday, which obviously obviously people have cast their ballots without the knowledge of what happens in the debate on Tuesday. Does it trouble you that we'll have to wait days, if not weeks, for the outcome of the tight races? And obviously we're focused on what happens September 1st. Janine, let me start with you.
I mean, I think we have to be ready for a chaotic election in days, if not weeks, if not months, before we know the outcome of many of these races, and that's understandable. The pandemic is chaos. I did hear this incredible fact, though, that I didn't know before. In the Constitution, if we don't have a president picked by January 20th, the House Speaker becomes acting president. So if that is not an impetus for Republicans to wrap this thing up quickly, I don't know what is.
Marianne?
Yeah, and Nancy Pelosi pointed that out a few weeks ago, and that was not a coincidence, okay? Let's be clear. What troubles me is the fact that Donald Trump is trying to sabotage this election, and he's going to go to blue states, including Massachusetts, for everybody who thinks we don't matter. We matter in this one because he's going to try to demonstrate that Democrats can't run government, can't do the election, and call the election into account. That should scare every American. So everyone should have drop boxes, and I don't understand why they don't yet in every city and town in the state. This is a dry run for November 3rd. September 1st is. It will take at least a week to find out the elections, the Senate race, the congressional races, all of that. And everyone needs to be part of the GOTV operation to make sure that Donald Trump can't cheat this election to stay in the White House, because that's how he got there.